The complete history of the Minecraft New York City SMP server. I've made many videos on this server for quite a while now. I think I started around March. We're already up to 10 episodes, and we have a rich history on the server, with things that weren't covered in my videos. I felt that it'd be interesting to you all, so here I am, bringing you the complete history of the Minecraft New York City SMP server. This history will be chopped up into chapters to get full, deep coverage in each part of the history. So, let's begin. The beginning, Chapter 1. The Minecraft New York City server started off as an anarchy server on Minecraft 1.15.2. The amount of players at first was very small. When the server began and the world first generated, I went out thousands of blocks from the spawn to start a base, because usually in anarchy servers you don't build a base at spawn. I also had a large player base at the time, so I needed to be in a secure location. I always look for plains biomes because they're the easiest to expand on. So I found a nice place beside a river and an island, and I settled there. This was the start of something great. Expansion, Chapter 2. When I settled down, I asked some members of the server to join me to make a nice big city. To join, you'd have to swear not to grief and to abide by the city's rules. It was an anarchy server, you know. We still had to have trust in each other. People of the city could agree on making new rules and removing old ones. We ended up getting a large amount of settlers and needed to set up a currency to trade. We all agreed on a format of ingots and jewels that would be used as a currency. Gold ingots would be used as $5, iron ingots would be used as $10, diamonds would be used as $100, and emeralds would be used as $1,000. Since we were allowed to cheat because of the server being an anarchy one, we definitely had enough gold and diamonds to go around. People began opening shops, first one being Tyler's Brewlicious Brews, and the other being the KFC building. We also needed new land to build on, so we set fire to the dark oak forest behind the buildings of New York City at the time. The fire got out of control and eventually destroyed all the nearby forests. Other than that, things were looking great. New York City, Chapter 3. The city was growing fast. We needed to decide what we wanted to do with the city. A name, a way of governing. These questions were tossed around. The people ended up deciding to name the city New York and base it off the real one. The government was one of our own, me being the president and electing Congress members to help pass laws and remove old ones. I being the governor of New York State, being able to control local laws for people exclusively to the city to abide by. Everything was looking up. More buildings got made, and the economy was looking great. More people arriving in New York City, nothing could be better. During this time, I was asked if farms would be allowed in the city. Since we were basing the city off of the real one, I decided that farms shouldn't be allowed in the city, and people agreed. I thought of making a colony so people could go to the farm and bring goods back to the city. I ended up enlisting my cousin TJP0630 with the task of finding a nice location to establish a colony. TJP0630 ended up creating the colony not too far west of the city on the coast. We named the area Brooklyn. TJP0630 ended up using the land for his own personal business that he created. The acquisition of Farming Co. and Mining Co. Chapter 4. With a booming economy, I figured I should acquire a business. At the time, I only owned my own brewery, so I wanted something on a larger scale that was mostly developed. I started negotiation talks to TJP0630 about purchasing his farming company. After many meetings and negotiations, we settled on a purchase of $25,000 at the time.
I started to make a castle-like building near the city. I made tunnels around it, then I made a farm in it. Then I made the farm bigger and better. Then I found its true potential, so I began to build small farms around the base. Then Tyler asked me about selling it to him for $25,000. I thought about it, then I sold the company.
I finally owned my first business and I gained a monopoly on the food goods market. I ended up opening stores selling goods at great prices and figuring out compact ways of farming locally in New York City using towers. I hired a lot of people from New York City and made a lot of money. I kept a close eye on TJP 0630 during this time because I knew he was up to something brilliant. TJP 0630 was working on a mining project in New York City with his friend Cheater.
Then me and my friend began mining under the city, and we made it bigger and bigger. Then I made a factory and made automated smelting machines. Then Tyler wanted to buy it. Then I said yes, and I got $25K. So I was on my way of being the most richest player on the server.
They created a mine nearby New York City and having a full-scale mining operation. They ended up founding the company Mining Co. I ended up getting a job there after a couple of days of its creation and saw its potential. Since it was a startup and I've done large business deals with TJP 0630 in the past, it was easy for me to convince him into selling the company to me for $25,000. This company was something big, and it would have been my best investment. And this company has done tremendous stuff for New York City. This ended up making TJP 0630 the richest person in New York City at the time. In agreement, he was to keep his job as a high manager at the company, so it seemed like a steal for him. Nothing changed, but for New York City, it changed everything. Since New York City was expanding, there's a very large demand for cobblestone. I started a huge mining operation to capitalize on the demand. I also ended up making other mining operations on getting currency from the mines to personally benefit. As Mining Co. began to expand in workers and in size, Farming Co. began to sink. I was now prioritizing Mining Co. because it was a success. Chapter 5. The First Great Depression. TJP 0630 being the richest man because of people buying his companies, and gaming gamers for mining the money, the race began to be the richest person. Everyone began to fly out of New York City into the extreme hills biome to mine for emeralds due to them having the highest value of $1,000. People were making $180,000 plus a night, and the currency began to hyperinflate. It got so bad that we needed to expand the bank's vault to hold the amount of money we had. The price of product began to rise and the value of the dollar began to plummet. We ended up appointing gaming gamers to the role of head of treasury to help fix this problem. We began figuring out a replacement currency that the people couldn't get on their own and was controlled by the government. We decided on having gaming gamers write and sign books that were titled their value and currency. To make a lot of it, we ended up using a Loma inventory duplication glitch at the time to make tons of shulker boxes full to the brim with the currency to put in the national treasury and to spread to the public. The Money Act was passed on March 18th, 2020 to replace the old currency with the new. Everyone who had old money in the bank could exchange it for $1,000 in the new currency. The struggle began. No one was rich anymore. No one had money. Businesses couldn't afford to keep their employees and banks couldn't afford to give out loans. There wasn't enough money in circulation to do anything. All Farming Co. and Mining Co. employees were laid off and most of the businesses couldn't afford to stay open. Like the KFC and the TJP 063 lawyer's office. People couldn't afford places to live or things to eat. People cried out for escape from the tragedy. The government began hiring people to do work for it. These government jobs were used as a way to put money in circulation. We paid people to terraform the land and to expand the city. We paid people to do mining expeditions, and we paid people to create states and towns and villages. Slowly but surely, the economy began to make a comeback. Businesses began to open back up, and jobs became available. The new economy was now in full swing, and we needed something to celebrate it. The beginning of the skyscrapers. Chapter 6. We were now out of the economic crisis, into a new age of expansion. People were looking for a way to celebrate. The city was very colorless at the time, and full of cobblestone, so the idea of building a skyscraper was used. Mining Co. partnered with the newly formed Construction Co. to begin construction of the first skyscraper, the Chrysler Building. Sketches began, and the look of the building was modeled after the real one in New York City. We used 3D renders of the building to help us get a better understanding of how to build it. After a couple of days, we began building. The new tower was to replace the old skyscraper T-Tower in Midtown, built in January, for the time being the largest skyscraper ever built. This new building needed to be special. It needed to be the tallest man-made structure in the world. Construction began March 23rd. The building began to take shape. TJP 063 helped at Mining Co. to gather resources to construct the new building. On March 25th, the building was finalized. The new skyscraper represented the strength and wealth of New York City and its people, in celebration of the end of something tragic and the beginning of a new New York. The End of Anarchy, Chapter 7. The new skyscraper was built, and the economy was great. People just wanted to celebrate. I ended up opening a club on the first floor of the Chrysler Building called the Richmond Club that featured Tyler's Delicious Brews and Farming Co. Foods. People were having a blast, but while all this is happening, behind the scenes, the crime rates of New York City began to skyrocket. No longer were people home all the time. People were out partying, so it was the perfect time to strike. People began to get robbed, and organized crime began to appear in the city, with the Irish Potato Mafia and the Creeper Gang. People were frustrated and began to complain and plan an end to the government. We knew that things needed to change, but I didn't think that the government needed to be replaced. Everything began to become scary as we got rumor of a group planning to start a communist revolution in Manhattan. Thankfully, we put an end to that before it was too late. I began implementing radical changes in New York overnight to stop crime. As a server admin, I began to implement anti-griefing plugins to protect people's stuff, but the damage was already done. No one wanted to live in New York anymore. This marked the end of anarchy on the server. Colorado, Chapter 8. New York City was scarred after the crime. People weren't pleased with New York and wanted to make their own state. This led to the formation of New Jersey and Colorado. New Jersey was a neighbor state to New York, governed by gaming gamers. He was angered by the crime, but he still needed to stay close enough to New York to conduct business. Colorado, though, on the other hand, Colorado was a distant state. Its soda founded Colorado after New Jersey joined the Union, forming the United States. Colorado seemed like a nice, cozy place to escape from the loud crowd in New York City. The escape was very short, though.
One day I woke up and someone made a new base and they were becoming a state, so I decided to make a house there. I went there on a mountain. I built a nice house, then I moved my cat into a room of my new house. Then the governor of the state was looking for a senate for the state, so I had my cat Ryan run for senate. He won, so my cat was the Senate of Colorado.
The governor of Colorado was very shady with the things he did. He would rob citizens of Colorado and blame it on the people of New York. This ended up causing anger in New Yorkers. We tried to keep Soda's mouth shut, but he continued. The people of New York and New Jersey, frustrated with the actions of the governor of Colorado with Soda, had the local government plan a heist on Colorado. TJP 0630 became very close to the governor of Colorado, and is a figurehead of the people of Colorado, a representative. We needed to target him for this heist. He was already aware of the things that Soda did, so he was a very easy target. When TJP-0630 and its Soda were away, we snuck into Colorado and robbed TJP-0630 and framed it on its Soda. After the heist, we began to do thorough searches of Colorado and kept close tabs on the things that went on there. But this heist didn't go as planned. TJP-0630 was convinced that the New Yorkers were responsible for the robbery. The Raid of New York, Chapter 9. While Gaming Gamers and I were away, the people of Colorado planned a siege on New York City.
One day I got on to see that my stuff was gone, and the governor said that the people of New York took my stuff. So the governor was getting ready to raid New York. So I helped him. So when it happened, the governor knew where it was and everyone thought he didn't know. So I tried to mislead him, but he knew where to go, somehow. So once the raid was done, we went back to base.
Colorado citizens marched to New York and pillaged through the buildings, taking what they pleased, robbing the banks and destroying valuables. When we returned, we were fuming. This was a declaration of war. Chapter 10. Civil War. Colorado just raided New York, and we found bunkers appearing in Colorado containing weaponry. The United States was pissed. We began placing sanctions on Colorado, and Colorado announced their secession from the Union. New York and New Jersey began creating civil unrest in the state of Colorado. The U.S. military began to surround Colorado. The U.S. military didn't take action until the Colorado people pushed outwards and began the fight. Me as commander of the army and my second-hand man Gaming Gamers began to set fire to Colorado. TJP-0630 and his Soda began to lose trust in one another, since TJP-0630 showed an interest in rejoining the United States since it looked like a losing battle.
One day I got on to see that my cat Ryan was missing. So I went outside of my new house and I saw the governor of Colorado was kidnapping my cat. So I chased him, and then the governor of Colorado killed Ryan. An hour later, I dug a grave in front of my new house. My cat, also known as the Senate, was officially dead.
We ended up causing a fight within Colorado, resulting in the death of Ryan Sr., the cat, and the Senate. TJP-0630 no longer had any interest with Colorado. With no one defending Colorado, the siege of Colorado began on July 3rd of 2020, resulting the city to be left in ashes.
An hour later, I was thinking how to get back at the governor. Then I hear fireworks going off and TNT. The whole state of New York was invading. So I hid in my destroyed base. Then when it was all over, Colorado was a crater. Some of the New Yorkers' grave robbed Ryan's grave.
Ryan's grave was robbed, houses were burnt down and blown up, and the walls of the state were destroyed. It marked the end of Colorado. Its Soda, the former governor of Colorado, was then banned from the server for not following the no offline rating policy, and TJP-0630 was entered in the United States Witness Protection Program. After then, TJP-0630 was forever bound to a house in New York, Manhattan, as a condition of the Witness Protection Program.
So I rejoined in New York, and I was in a Witness Protection Program. Then after a while, I sued the people who stole Ryan's stuff. Then, 1 month after the attack on Colorado, Ryan was officially buried in the Bronx, where he still is today.
Also, with the end of the war, we encountered another economic collapse with the new currency. We ended up implementing a new final currency, leaving everyone back to zero. People were fed up with the trouble and slowly began to leave the server, leaving me to make more buildings and to expand the city while everyone was away. Back in New York, Chapter 11. Back in New York before the Colorado disaster, when things were great and the people of New York wanted to build another skyscraper. This is back in June. This next skyscraper needed to exceed the Chrysler Building and be even better. No one really knew what they wanted to build. They wanted a skyscraper, though. After a while talking to the citizens and discussing plans for what we should do, we settled down on the One World Trade Center building. We needed companies to partner to make this building work. This building needed a lot of glass, and Mining Co. couldn't provide the glass, so they ended up partnering with MineZon, a local startup, to make it happen. We used the same old techniques as last time to make this skyscraper. 3D models, we drew blueprints, eventually the design was settled on, and construction began. The two companies floored the construction of the building, and we finished the building in 3 days, with construction ending on June 27th of 2020. This was quite the sight to see, and MineZon began to flourish as a large titan in the resource industry. A modern change to the building was that we did remodel the antenna in mid-November of 2020. Returning to present day at the time. After a week or so, I told everyone about the server being updated to 1.16, the Nether update. Excitement filled the server as everyone began to rush on to get netherite and make money in New York. I didn't show much interest in the netherite than others. Businesses began to pop up selling gold, ancient debris, and netherite. The server's player base was back, and the new stable economy began to flourish. New laws had to be made to work with the new rush of people mining in the Nether in New York. The fad began to end, though, in early August, leaving the server empty once again. Chapter 13. The Time Lost. Everyone was gone and it was just me. I was working on a city for a while and built more structures until I took a couple of days off to do something else. During the downtime in New York City, we lost a chance at max expansion and taking advantage of our flourishing economy. The economy was now stalling out, and the server player base began to drop. It was a sad sight to see. Chapter 14. The Empire State. I asked the old players of the server if I should build the skyscraper, and if so, should it be the Empire State Building? I got 2 responses saying yes, so I thought that was good enough to go to work. While everyone was away, I spent a lot of time gathering resources for a project like this, so I was finally prepared for the job. I wanted this building to look very close to its real counterpart, so I went to the internet for an example for me to follow. I ended up finding a YouTuber who made tutorial videos on how to make it. The videos were made back like 6 years ago, but they were really easy to follow. In a matter of 6 hours, I finished the Empire State Building on July 13th of 2020, 11 p.m. This made people get on to check it out in person, which led to some player activity, but again, people began to fade. Chapter 15. Mods. In September, I began telling people about the project I was working on. I was gonna add mods to New York City. It took quite a long time, but eventually good mods were added to 1.16. I created a mod pack with mods we liked, and spread it to the old player base. People were extremely excited to get on and build with the new mods. Most of the player base returned. We got some new members, but we lost some of our old ones. Those who came back were in for a wild ride. Chapter 16. The Industrial Revolution. Now that we had machinery, the demand for factories, ores, and other goods skyrocketed. Business was booming. I couldn't believe what was happening. I ended up founding the New York State Electric and Gas Company alongside with Radio Shack. Everyone was making money without the inflation problems this time. People were building new factories and buying machinery. People were now making product, and the old agricultural-based society we once knew was gone. We were now in a new age of New York City. Chapter 17. The Here and Now. Here we are, present day, in a modernizing industrial New York, breaking the boundaries and making more history. That's it, for now. This video was in celebration to the server's upcoming first birthday in January. We hope you enjoyed our rich history on the server, and I hope this gives you a better understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. Please check out TJP0630's channel for him making an appearance, and please like and subscribe. Let me know what you liked about the video. I'll see you guys in SMP episode 11. Goodbye.